poppin', everybody? Welcome back to another episode of On the Gutter, brought to you guys by Motive Bowling. Today is Valentine's Day, so got to give some literal love to Motive Bowling. But, we love to talk about the best couples on Valentine's Day, right? So we have Zendaya and Tom Holland, we have Travis and Taylor. But you know what else makes a really good couple? Is the brand
You
new
and I.
Sure. The brand new Evoke and the Tank Rampage Pearl are releasing officially today as a Tank Rampage Pearl and the Evoke. So obviously we've spent a lot of weeks talking about these bowling balls. If you've been following the PBA Tour, you've been seeing them a lot, especially if you've been watching Bowl TV. So these brand new bowling balls are spectacular from Motive. I've kind of become addicted to the Evoke, and I know that's not always a good thing when it comes to bowling balls, especially when I have the amount that I do. But looking at the Evoke and the versatility that it offers, both between a drilling aspect and by a surface aspect, it's just the perfect ball for any bowler. On top of that, the Tank Rampage Pearl has been making some major moves out on the PBA Tour. So if you guys are looking for the most well-rounded arsenal and to have the best duo that you could possibly have, make sure you head on over to motivebowling.com, visit buddiesproshop.com, or hit up your local pro shop and get motivated. Of course, this is DJ. I'm joined by Kurt. Kurt, what's good, dude?
What is up, DJ? Happy Valentine's.
Yeah, you threw me off with that comment. Was not expecting that one.
I thought you'd get a laugh out of that. I sure did.
Yeah.
Ah,
So yeah, we are back with another episode. Obviously, I just want to start it off and kick it off with letting you guys know that if you haven't entered the contest for our 100th episode giveaway yet, make sure you head on over to the Facebook page, the On the Gutter, the Facebook page, and just go to the episode with Daria and comment what your favorite episode was and tag a friend. And if you don't want to do it that way, if you're more of a YouTube person, which you are hopefully watching us now on YouTube, you can head on over to the On the Gutter podcast page on YouTube and drop a comment there. Let us know what your favorite episode was and let us know who your favorite bowling YouTuber is. And you'll be entered to win the contest that we are announcing next Friday. So obviously, we talk about our weeks of bowling, and this part of the podcast is brought to you guys by Mojo's DJ Services. So if you guys are looking for the best entertainment purpose needs, make sure you head on over to mojosdjservices.com for anything that you might need. Obviously, it's Valentine's Day, so you're a little late to serenade that special somebody, but we have St. Patrick's Day coming up next. So I think if you guys are looking for an absolute bash, you want to have a party, you want to invite your favorite Irish looking person, make sure you head on over to mojosdjservices.com or hit up Mojo's Disc Jockey Services on Facebook. Hit up Joe and he'll get you all set up with everything that you could possibly need. So, Kurt, what was your week of bowling like?
my week of bowling was unfortunately non-existent. I didn't throw a single ball this last week, so I'm excited to get out for league because it's been a while. I think I've only bowled league once in 2024, so I can't
That's
wait to get.
insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy, especially since you're somebody who, like, for the most part, especially last year, you were bowling more than pretty much anybody I know. Like, you were bowling 2 or 3 nights of league each week, and then you were practicing on top of that.
Yeah, I was bowling like 4 or 5 days. And
That's
then, like I said, I've kind of just been slow getting back from this injury, and I've just been working like almost every day. So it's kind of been tough. But yeah, I'm gonna have to get out, for league, and then I'm gonna get out and practice for sure this weekend. I got some time off, so
nice. That should be good.
absolutely. So I'm sure your week of bowling was more exciting, DJ. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, it was different. So I've had a crazy week. I've talked about how things kind of went downhill a little bit, but yeah, this past week has been decent. I actually went out Friday night to Ann Arbor, and that was a ton of fun. But then Saturday, I ended up going to the Molsons for a little bit to watch the recap of that or watch the match play for that, since you and I both happened to miss there. Just watched a little bit about bowling there, and then last week we have obviously had league, and I would say. I shot 590 something. It was just under 600, but it might have been one of the best like 590s I've ever had. I had three splits, I think it was. So I had like a 24810, a 710, and something else. And then I had a washout, like the PBA washout, and I made the 1246 and I left a 10 pin, which is always somewhat impressive to me how I'm able to do that. But beyond that, I didn't miss any other makeables. I didn't miss any single pins. I just didn't strike enough. So it's been kind of weird because Wednesday nights, the last like 3 weeks, the pattern that we have been bowling on is a 48-foot pattern. And it's for the most part, the beginning of the season was really tight. Like the beginning of the third, it was super tight down lane and really didn't open up until about halfway through the third game. And we still weren't making like giant moves. And the last 3 weeks, it feels like we've been moving 20 boards left by the second game. And it's just been blowing up way sooner. So that could be probably the weather. It could just be the amount of people are getting used to playing the right area on the pattern, whatever it may be. So that was kind of tough. I got a practice session in as well, just working on a couple different things, really just trying to focus on the tempo, like I mentioned last week, just trying to understand. how to get my body into the proper positions and my arm swing into where it needs to be to kind of maximize everything. So it wasn't a huge week of bowling, but I feel like it was an okay week of bowling that I can't be too upset about.
Yeah, that's all right. At least you were, making your spares and stuff. Too bad you weren't striking a little more, but
Yeah.
that pattern has certainly been tough for our team this section.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was also able to get out and watch some of the Molsons. Early on, I watched the first two games of match play, and then I had to head out to go to work. But
Mhm.
a lot of bowlers. It looked like a lot of fun.
Something like that. So yeah, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's get into the weekend recap.
Yeah. As always, guys, the weekend recap is brought to you by Buddy's Pro Shop. Buddy's Pro Shop wants to recognize your success by introducing the Buddy's Pro Shop Bowler of the Week and Month programs. The winners will be hooked up with free Buddies merch, with one lucky winner going home with a free ball of choice every month. So go follow Buddies Pro Shop over on Facebook to find out more details on how you can enter that giveaway. So this week we had two regionals, and they were both in Fort Myers, Florida. So we had the PBA Lightning Strikes Challenge. This was a non-champs event, and this was won by Tomas Keiko. And to round out the top four, we had Ethan Fior, Lewis Martin, and Charlie Ferrero.
Hmm.
And then we also had the PBA 50 Lightning Strikes Challenge non-champs event. And the winner here was a local, a non-member actually, Dennis Bush, getting the win.
Okay.
And rounding out the top four, Anthony Cruz, Mark Simpson, and Alan Grobmeyer.
Okay. So I don't really know too much about those PBA 50 guys, but Avis Thomas is out on the PBA tour, part of the PBA league and everything like that. And they were talking like ever since he's been in the States, that's all he does is bowl. Like anything that he can find, he bowls, whether he has to travel down south or to a different state. If he's bowling regionals, like he's finding everything that he can bowl. So kind of cool to see Thomas, get a W at a regional.
Yeah, I saw he posted on Facebook that he flew to Florida in between tour stops to
Yeah.
try and get himself qualified so that he can bowl the PTQ for the
Tournament of
tournament
champions.
champions.
Yeah, that's
So that
crazy.
was cool. He was able to just fly down to Florida, win a tournament, and now he's good to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, and just imagine what would happen now if he wins the TFC. It's like, oh, I flew down to win it, and now I'm bowling the TFC and winning the TFC just because he flew down to Florida for a 1 weekend tournament.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
That'd be
that'd be
so cool to
insane.
see.
Yeah. So obviously on top of that, we have a few other tournaments, and then we'll get into the PBA tournament. So we had Glenn Pilon. He won the third annual Wayne Webb Classic in Ohio. So he said it was a pretty good tournament. He said he had to strike on the 10th to win. So I think no matter what the tournament is, anytime that you have to strike out to win, you deserve all the props. So shout out to him for that. We had Trey Ford and Andrew Smith. They won the Planet Doubles in OKC. So Trey Ford's obviously a very young kid. He's a two-hander. He's made some noise on the PBA tour a little bit, I think like last year or 2 years ago. So great for him to get that. We had Scott Robertson. He won the 2024 SA State Open Masters Championship. So Scott throws the ball incredibly well. I love his physical game, so it's cool to see him get the W there. We had Chelsea Klingler defeating Robin Orlikowski to win the 2024 Calder City Queens Championship. So I know that was a big tournament on the west side of the state of Michigan. So shout out to Chelsea for that one. And then, of course, it's a motive podcast. So we had Randy Weiss once again. He won the bracket challenge of the Carolinas. So I think this is like his second or third win in a row or something like that. He said it's his second challenge title. So I'm a little confused because I feel like we just mentioned him. But yeah, he was throwing a nuclear forge. So kind of seems like Randy's kind of getting it put together. And when he's entering these tournaments, he's definitely bowling well. So yeah, just a little bit of a weekend recap there for some other tournaments. And then we have the PBA Illinois tournament that we want to talk about.
Yes, yes, we had another tour event, the Illinois Classic. So we will go through the step ladder here. In the first match, we had the 4 seed Jake Peters getting the win over EJ Tackett, the 5 seed, 224 to 198. In the second match, we had the 3 seed AJ Johnson taking down Jake Peters, 234 226. And then we had AJ getting the win over Sean Lavery's Far, 208 178 in the semifinal. And in the championship match, Marshall Kent, the 1 seed, gets the win, 214 to 180. and Marshall Kent wins the Illinois Classic, taking home $25,000.
Yeah, and it was really cool to watch because there's a couple of reasons, a couple of things I want to discuss about this. One, that was the first time that I believe Motive has had three staffers on a TV final on a step ladder, so that was really great for us. Obviously, having EJ, Sean, and AJ there. The second thing is that the way that the format worked was best of seven. So Jake Peters and EJ actually bowled the round leading up to the TV show, and if Marshall would have lost his match in the final or the round of eight, then Marshall would have been on the TV show and EJ wouldn't have been. But I believe Marshall beat Sean Rash to claim the number one seed, and then since EJ was the next highest seed, he was able to snag the fifth spot for the TV show. That being said, like I said, EJ and Jake had bowled against each other, and it was a best of seven where Jake beat EJ. That's why he was the four seed. But EJ in pinfall carry beat him by like 140 or 170 pins or something like that, like overall the
Wow.
seven games. So EJ beat him by whatever 20 pins a game on average, but lost the match, which is obviously intense. And some people love that, some people hate it. Like it's a really kind of tough boat to be in. It's like, well, which way do you prefer, right? Like, do you want to have the guy who knocks down the most pins move on, or do you want the guy who wins the matches move on? So that was just obviously kind of cool. And then seeing Sean kind of have this redemption a little bit, making it back on TV. And then AJ, we mentioned it last year after he won the Lucky Larson, how he is going to be feeling himself and hopefully, out there bowling well, and he's making another step ladder. So yeah, overall, a great show. Obviously, hats off to Marshall. I said with that part of the lane that they were playing and how good Marshall is at doing that, I said it was going to be really tough to beat Marshall in a one game match to win the title. I remember watching Marshall in college, and he was literally lofting the ball like two lanes basically. Like it was insane the stuff that he could do when he was moving inside. So yeah, it was going to be a tough feat for anybody to beat Marshall. But yeah, obviously, like I said, Motive had an amazing showing during that step ladder, and I think it was overall a pretty decent show.
Yeah, yeah, that was awesome. Motive had that many guys out there on the show. And yeah, I really enjoyed that the match play, the best of seven series that they had,
Hmm.
because yeah, it's more exciting that way, I think, and it kind of swing any way. And it's fun to watch it because they use their social medias to show you a lot of what's going on, who's facing who, and
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. I like that format.
Yeah, it was great. And obviously, as we're recording it right now, we have the inaugural, I guess technically, Pete Weber Missouri Classic, which is going on. So Missouri's always had a tournament, but this is now Pete Weber's tournament, which is really cool. He's out there bowling right now. So we'll be recapping that next week. But there's a couple other announcements, obviously, I want to kind of talk about. So the CTF announced that Isabel Ryu will be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So I know Isabel has been an amazing bowler from Team Canada. I know that she's been on the team multiple times. I remember, her being able to work with my dad and just the amount of people that she's kind of mentored over through the years. So I'm not surprised to see her being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I think it's pretty well deserved. And then on top of that, the USBC has their inaugural class of the USBC Collegiate Hall of Fame. So this is kind of a new version of them for all the people that haven't been involved in college bowling to be inducted into the USBC Hall of Fame. And the people that are going in will be Jack Knofton, Kelly Kulick, and Rick Steelsmith. So I believe those are all bowlers on the bowling side. We had Carl Nikolai, who I think is from Michigan, just part of like the volunteer kind of the helping portion of the Hall of Fame. And then we have our guest who is being inducted as well. Arguably the greatest college coach of all time, one of the most winningest coaches of all time in college bowling, Mr. Gordon Vadakin. Obviously, a longtime head coach of the Wichita State Shockers program. So we have Gordon on in the podcast later on to talk about his career, his coaching career, what it's been like for him to coach so many Hall of Famers, so many future Hall of Famers, and just going over the accolades, going over the numbers of the people that he had coached is insane. Like the amount of accomplishments that people have had under his wing is amazing. So, obviously, a huge shout out to all those being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And please make sure you guys stick around to the interview with Gordon. I think it's an amazing interview and really kind of opens your eyes of how a leadership or a leader can really form bowlers such as Chris Barnes, Dasha Kovalova, Mitch Hupé, Francois Lavoie, Jake Peters, like all these amazing bowlers have all been coached by Gordon Vadakin. So it's a really great interview.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. And congratulations to everyone who was inducted.
Absolutely. So on top of that, obviously, each week we have a bowling this month quote, and this one's kind of interesting to me because this is something that I've struggled with a little bit. So this is from Ernesto Avila, and it's from the 10 Keys to Finding Success. So this quote is, as a bowler, you can't be the next Belmo or EJ or Norm Duke. You can only be the best and first you. So I saw a lot of people sharing this on Facebook. So what's your take on this one, Kurt?
Yeah, be you. You can only be you. As much as you like want to throw the ball like somebody else, you can piece together your game like somebody else as much as you can, but at the end of the day, you can only be you and you're only able to do what you're physically able to do. So, you have to be the best you rather than trying to be the second somebody else.
Yeah, that I mean that's fair. The way that I kind of look at that is because I'm somebody who has obviously struggled with my hand position at the bottom pretty much my entire life, right? And I've had this conversation with a couple different coaches and a couple different guys I respect in the game, I should say. So part of me is like, hey, just throw the ball how you throw the ball and make it the best that you possibly can. Be the most efficient that you can. The other half of me is like, no, like get your hand in the same position as AJ Chapman, AJ Johnson, Mitch Ufe. Like get your hand position and just try to be them. Like try and throw the ball like them. So in the grand scheme of things, it's like, yeah, I can only be DJ Rose. I can only be myself. But when it comes to the bowling game, it's like why would you not try and emulate or mimic the release of somebody who has seen success, who has one of the greatest releases? Why would you not try and be like that person? So I agree with it, like just be yourself, be you, be whoever you can be each day kind of thing. But like I said, the part of the bowling game is like, no, I want my release. If I could say, hey, I don't want to throw the ball like me anymore, I want to throw it exactly like AJ Johnson, I would do that in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even take a second guess at it. So
Yeah.
that's where that quote kind of sticks with me. It's like, I do want to be me, but I also want to be them.
Yeah. No, I get that. What you can have to realize is that you can only be you. So,
Yeah,
like, using their game to try and learn things and try and emulate stuff can help you develop your own game.
right.
But, like, at the end of the day, you're just going to be you. So,
Yeah.
you have to kind of figure out your own ways.
Yeah, and that's why I said it. Like it's been a really big debate. Do I just stick with what I'm used to and the way that I release the ball and just try and maximize that, or do I really focus and work to throw the ball like one of those other guys? So, yeah, Ernesto, I mean that's a great quote, but definitely I've seen a lot of people kind of share that on Facebook and be like, yeah, I just want to be me. Like I'm trying to be the best version of myself, which we've talked about on this podcast before. But when it comes to actually physically throwing the ball, I feel like there's a little bit of leniency slash like kind of a loophole, I guess I could say, of like, no, I don't want to throw it like DJ Rose. I want to throw it like AJ Johnson.
A loophole to being you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right. So, it's my turn to try and do some trivia to DJ. Um, I've been going light on you, so I figure this one might be a little harder.
All right.
Um, so Marshall Kent won the tournament this week for his sixth title.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Are and so the question this week is what are the other or what else are the six championships that he's won? Now, this is not an easy list, I must say, because they're not just simple tournaments that have happened like every year or something. So I guess that's a clue. Um, Another clue I can tell you is two of them appear not to be singles events.
Yeah.
One of them is an extra frame event, and one of them was overseas.
Okay. So he won the Mark Roth Marshall Holman event with EJ,
Yep, that was 2022.
and I don't remember who his partner is. I know he won the Lucy.
I don't have him down for winning the Lucy. I didn't see that on his list of on the PBA website at least.
Did he win another doubles? Did he win another Mark Roth and Marshall Holman tournament?
No,
I could have swore he won the Lucy.
I'm giving you
Um,
one strike for that. He might have won the Lucy. Maybe they just don't list it on the PBA website. I'm not sure, but I
I
think
thought
it
they
would.
did. I
Yeah, I
could.
think they would have if he had one.
Yeah. Okay, so he has one doubles title.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was last year or 2 years ago now. Wow, 2 years ago now with EJ.
Yep.
The overseas, I want to say I don't think he won the Ball Master because I think that the last person who won that was actually Nathan Ruela Joie before it was no longer a PBA tournament. So the only other one I could think of would be the Daido Japan Cup.
Nope.
Did he win the Lucky Larson?
No.
That's all three strikes.
Yeah, that's all three strikes. So I got him winning the 2014 Kingdom International Open in Saudi Arabia,
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
uh, 2016 PBA Team Challenge. So I
Oh,
counted that as a not singles one, right?
okay.
The 2017 Extra Frame Lubbock Sports Open.
I was gonna say Lubbock too.
Yeah, I figured that one you might get.
Yeah,
And you got the Roth Holman doubles, and of course the one he just won yesterday, the Illinois Classic.
yeah. Wow, that's I would have never got that international one. I forgot about the team challenge because that was a big deal. That was a huge tournament, and I think they only did it for like 1 or 2 years.
Yeah,
But I knew the Lubbock. I was just trying to get those international one. So
yeah. I read that. I was like, Kingdom International from Saudi Arabia. I didn't even know that was ever a thing.
that would have been like, ooh, he might have still been in college at that point, or that might have been his first year out of college because him and I bowled in the same sectional in 2013 in uh, Addison, Illinois, and he was still there. So that might have been his first year out of college that he won that.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow. Well, good job. Yeah, there was I would have got I had Lubbock, but that was in the doubles, and that was about it.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Well,
That
hey,
was tough.
yeah, shout out to Marshall for the 6 titles. I guess I didn't realize like that's over the span of 10 years that he's won 6 titles. So that's not bad, obviously. I mean, it's really hard to win on the PBA tour. So for him to have 6 titles in 10 years, especially like the struggles that he's had on TV, like he's finished second quite a few times. He's had a lot of bad breaks on TV. So that's pretty solid overall.
Yeah, I feel like I remember him making a bunch of the extra frame shows and
Yeah.
just, not coming all the way with a lot of the wins. So he
And
did win the one in Lubbock, though.
and he's been on TV twice, I believe, maybe one for a major and one for the World Series of Bowling, where he's 7-10 in like the eighth or ninth frame, both times to lose the match as well.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. So wow. Yeah. Anyways, that good job. Yeah, there was no way I was gonna get all those, but yeah, shout out to Marshall for that one.
Yep, congratulations. All right, guys. So now it is time for our question of the week. Our question of the week is, what event in bowling history, if changed, would have changed someone's career drastically? This question is asked from Frank.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start first because I
Okay.
really only have one that I could think of,
Okay.
and that is Tom Smallwood winning his first title at the World Championships.
Okay.
Because as you've seen, they made the whole TV show about his life. He was laid off worker and he had friends and stuff convince him to go bowl,
Yeah.
and he ended up winning a major championship and didn't have to go back to work when they called him back.
Yeah. So that's almost like negative. You're like, oh, like he wouldn't be on the tour
Well,
anymore if
basically, like, yeah, if he didn't win that, he's probably doesn't have a professional bowling career, right?
yeah, that's a good point. I never even thought about that one.
Yeah,
Hmm. No, that's a good one.
that would have drastically changed his career.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. I never even thought about that. The one that comes to mind would be Mike Fagan losing to Pete. And the reason why I say that is because Mike was so dominant on tour, right?
Mhm.
And by no means do I think Pete striking out to beat him to, win was like, oh no, I'm done. I can't do this anymore from Mike's point of view because he had a career that he wanted to pursue. But I feel like if he wins that tournament, he's got all the momentum and he continues to win and win. He could be where we look at EJ, Belmo, and Simon now because of how good he was. Like that moment, if he wins that tournament instead of Pete, where does that take Mike's career? Like where does that go? So I've always kind of thought about that. And then obviously, like we had the interview with Pete, like how many tournaments did Walter beat him in the finals? Where if Pete wins another one of those tournaments, all of a sudden he's player of the year, right? So his accolades, his overall appearance, like even goes higher for Pete. So I'm sure there's a moment back then that Pete probably lost a tournament by a couple pins to Walter, so to maybe lose out the tournament and lose player of the year for that year. So that's another one that kind of comes to mind. And then one other or couple events was Sean Rash's struggles on TV. How many titles did Sean Rash have a chance at and just couldn't get out of his own way on TV? If he
Yeah.
has a year or two where that all changes, where he doesn't have those struggles, where he doesn't miss those 10 pins, he doesn't miss the 3, 6, 9, 10, he wins, 2 or 3 more tournaments, his career could be so much higher than what it is right now, right? So obviously, like it's a numbers game. You're not going to win every time you're on TV, but I feel like Sean had one of the toughest things out there. And then the last one that also comes to mind is Rhino Page with his wrist injury. Rhino was so good for so many years too, and then he got injured. If that injury is no longer there, how good is Rhino now? How much more bowling does Rhino do? Is he a multi-player of the year? Is he a multi-major champion from even more than what he already was? So those were the ones that kind of stuck out to me. It's like, wow, these guys on kind of like the short end of the stick, right? Is that if any of those go a different way, those players' trajectories in their careers are completely different, way better than what we even view these players as right now.
Yeah, yeah, those are a lot of good ones, man. Absolutely. Um, for sure, the Rhino injury and yeah, Rash and all those, kind of, I don't want to say missed opportunities, but like, if you look at the amount of shows he's been on compared to the amount of titles he has, that could just be so much more.
Yeah, that's
And
that's
same
what I
with
mean.
the Pete and Walter, you see that in a lot of sports where somebody who's amazing comes up, but they're also playing at the same time where the best is playing, and it's
Yeah.
like you can't. It's hard to win more when they're bowling against them.
Yeah, I mean, we look at tennis with Rafa and Roger and Djokovic now, and even from like Formula One, where we went from Schumacher to Hamilton to Verstappen now, like it happens all the time. Tiger to Phil to Rory to Jordan. Like it's insane how that happens. These generations, they're so good. And since they're so good for so long, I don't want to say skips a generation, but it makes it almost impossible for anybody within those like 5 years to be like, I'm really good, but you're like, yeah, you're good, but we're still waiting for the next generational talent instead of just you.
Yeah,
So yeah, that was a great question. I like I said, there's been plenty of moments I think that we could kind of narrow it down to.
yeah, yeah. And looking at that Mike Fagan one, if Mike Fagan wins that show, we don't get "Who do you think you are? I am,"
Yeah,
and that would have taken a lot of eyes off of bowling because that brought a lot of eyes to it. So
yeah.
who knows? I think Fagan went on to win the Masters that year, so he
I
was
think he
still
did
top.
too.
Yeah,
But two majors in 1 year, like I said, what could that have done for his career? So,
yeah, absolutely.
things we'll never know. But yeah, like I said, if you guys want, leave us a comment on this episode. What career moment do you think could have changed the trajectory or the future of a current bowler right now? And let us know what you think was one of the biggest events that, if it was turned the other way, would have been a huge impact on the sport of bowling. But obviously, like we said, don't forget to head on over to the On the Gutter Facebook page to episode 100 with Daria Payok. Leave us a comment of your favorite episode and tag a friend. That way, you guys are entered into the giveaway that we will be doing next week. And of course, like I said, stick around to the interview with Mr. Coach Gordon Vadakin. It's an amazing interview, and all interviews, of course, are brought to you guys by Turbo Grips. So if you guys are looking for the best accessories on the market, don't forget to head on over to turbogrips.com or visit your local pro shop. You can get a new chamois, a puff ball, new grips, three ball bag, anything that you might need. If you guys want a coaching lesson, you can head on over to TurboTech in Chesterfield, Michigan, and set up a lesson with them, and they'll help you improve your game. But like I said, make sure you stick around to the interview with Mr. Gordon Vatican. Stick around next week for the contest giveaway and an announcement of a brand new sponsor as well. And as always, thanks, Kurt.
Thanks, DJ.
All right, everyone. So, like we mentioned, we are joined by arguably the greatest college coach, aka the most successful college coach that the world has ever seen. Somebody who's had a major impact on a ton of pro bowlers that we all look up to. We are joined by none other than Mr. Gordon Vatican. Coach, how you doing today?
Pretty good, DJ. It's really good to have you have me on. It's wonderful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you jumping on. Obviously, kind of what sparked this was that you were just inducted into the inaugural class of college bowling for the USBC Hall of Fame. So, first off, congratulations on that. That is obviously amazing.
Well, I'm kind of humbled by all of that. There's a enormous number of great college bowlers and coaches, and to be included on the first time in, I mean, I don't really know what to say. That had to be a hard job trying to figure out who to put
Yeah.
in this first nominating class. You know.
Yeah. And so I know, Tom Hess, we mentioned it earlier, was just inducted into the PBA Hall of Fame, but
Yes.
over the
Yes.
Bowl TV, they were talking about like this class and obviously with Rick Steele-Smith and Kelly Kulick and then yourself and how you were basically a no-brainer. So if anybody who is listening or is watching this doesn't know who Coach Vatican is, he is was a long-term coach for Wichita State University. And we're going to get into some of the accolades a little bit later on, but how did you get into coaching and I guess overall the sport of bowling?
Well, I don't know if I'm a no-brainer. I'm maybe bird-brained, but
Okay.
not sure anybody would say I was a no-brainer. But yeah, I got into, it's just like it's a normal story. I mean, I was a youth bowler in Wichita, and I was born here in Wichita, Kansas, and went to Wichita State. It kind of made sense, and majored in business. And yeah, I wasn't really recruited for the bowling team at that point. There was a coach there Then in my sophomore year, I joined the team, and there's a guy named Paul Wallachek. Everybody has a coaching story, follows some coach, and Paul
Yeah.
Wallachek, and the Wallachek name may sound familiar because his son Lonnie won several tour titles, and he was a graduate of the Wichita State program. But Paul was real visionary, and he implanted a lot of pretty cool goals in me. He didn't really maybe realize it at the time, but he really talked about the United States team. He talked about representing your country. He talked about bowling being a sport. And, we're going back to the early 70s. So this is a time where none of that was really thought of too much at that point in time yet. Coaching as an occupation wasn't really out there either. So,
Right.
yeah, I bowled on the college team for 4 years. We thought we were good, but we were really pretty lousy as a men's team, and
Okay.
our women's team was terrific.
Yeah.
And I inherited, after Paul left, I inherited the women's team in 1978. Now I had a predecessor to that. There was a women's only coach that coached the women in 1977. Her name was Vicki Little, and Vicki took her team to the national title that year. So she's like the only women's bowling coach that's a woman that early.
Mhm.
There's only a national tournament for that was the third year, and her girls won the 75 team. My wife, or a tournament, my wife was on that team.
Okay.
76 they got second, and Vicki took her women's team to the title in 1977. And then I inherited this great team in 1978, so I just kind of stood back and watched them, and they ended up winning the national title again. So we won 3 out of the first 4 and kind of put the program in women's bowling on the map. So I think my goal was, why can't we do this with the men? Why can't
Mhm.
we elevate the men's program to that same level? And that was kind of my early goal was in coaching, was to take the women and keep them there and get the guys up to that level.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So,
yeah, you inherited the team, the girls team basically, and then you
right,
were like, "Hey, listen, like I want to take over the program." And then you were
right,
looking at the men's side, you're like, "We need to build the men's as well as the women's." And
right.
what was men's bowling like back then? Because obviously, you have Wallachek, who's a family home name, right? Everybody knows the
Yeah,
Wallacheks.
yeah,
Anybody who's followed bowling at least should know that name. So, what was men's college bowling like at that time where you took over the team? Was it still
yeah.
fairly new?
Well, you have to remember what it was like. You're right. And I wasn't paid to coach at that point. We had an 8-lane center, still do, on the Wichita
Hmm.
State campus. I was a manager of that center. And the model for college bowling coaching was usually the manager of those rec centers, of those campus bowling centers, ended up being delegated the job. If you had an intercollegiate traveling team, you were the coach of both the men and the women. And that's the way it started out with me.
Okay.
So I was the head coach there from 78 on, but I was really being paid to run our rec center, and we had an engraving shop, we had a vending, we had amusement machine, arcade area, a huge billiard area. So that was my job. And
Okay.
it wasn't until we had a lot of success going forward, and I was burning the bridges at all end. I mean, we got my wife, who like I said, bowled on the 1975 team. We got married in 1979, and that's a blur back then. We had kids in the mid 80s, and I was traveling all kinds of college tournaments. I was bowling myself. She bowled. The kids were being raised. I was coaching on every weekend, traveling with the team, men and women's team. So it was a blur of constant activity and trying to run this business operation
Mhm.
successfully. Because if it wasn't run successfully and wasn't profitable, the bowling team would have just been cut from the
Right.
budget. So it
Yeah.
was important to do all of it well. And so that's what we try to do. We try to do all of it well, just like my goal to try to make the men's team well or good. I had to do everything as well as I could do it. So it was long, long hours. And I got used to that because I
Yeah.
love the job. I love the job. I love the coaching aspect. I love the aspect, and still do, of student development and making players better. And that's really my lifelong effort, is how can I improve you personally? How can I make
Mhm.
you better as a student? How can I improve you as an athlete? And those were the 3 things that I always focused on in that order: personal, academic, athletic. So, and that's where we were until, gosh, how long did that take? All the way to 1996.
Okay.
And in that kind of watershed year, the president of the university said, "Gosh, let's make bowling and its coaches, let's split the management of the rec center away from the coaching of the bowling teams. The bowling teams were really successful. We'd won a number of national titles, but in order to have more success, you couldn't do both of these and keep your sanity.
Right.
You had to have separate management, and that's what happened. Separate management of our recreation center facility, and separate management of our bowling team, with at that time a men and women's coach. We hired 2 full-time coaching positions in for the fall of 1995, and
Wow.
that was kind of a watershed moment, I think, in maybe the whole occupation of coaching. I don't know if there was any paid coaches at that point in time, maybe
Mm.
anywhere. And so we were one of the first to be paid to do this job. Certainly it needed to be. And anybody who's coached bowling at all knows, holy moly, this is beyond. You have
Yeah.
so much that you need to know and learn and continue to learn just to stay up. It certainly needs and deserves a full-time effort. And that's luckily what the president of Wichita State elected to do. And we took off from there, and we probably learned more about how to coach a men and women's athletic team in those first 4 or 5 years that we were paid full-time to do it
Mm.
than we had learned in all those years from the early 70s up until 1996. It was just a lot of trial and error and learning from other sports, and how can we model and role play other successful sports, not just bowling, other bowling programs, but other teams, like North Carolina in basketball, or how can we
Mm.
look at Duke, or how can we look at the best in college football, and try to understand how can we be the best college sport, not just the best bowling program. So our goals were, we were kind of crazy, maybe naive too, but
Yeah.
we knew that to get to the level we wanted to get to, we had to study the things. We had to study success in college sports generally. So that's what has happened since then, and we've had 2 full-time positions, and we've had in more recent years 3 full-time positions. And here very recently, our women are finally switching over to the athletic side of the house, which is
Yeah.
a long story in and of itself. But very excited for them, and very excited for our men's team too.
Yeah.
Excellent coaching going on both sides of our program, directed by Mark Lewis, who has been with me from the early 70s, and he is just incredibly savvy at managing and coaching and learning about the game and trying to teach new players coming in, no matter their skill level, how much better they can be. So that's been our goal, is improving the
Yeah.
student athletes that come to us, DJ.
Yeah. No, that's a lot to unpack there. It's kind of crazy as somebody like myself who, bowled against your team and everything like that. The main priority that you were at Wichita wasn't even for coaching. It just kind of developed into a coaching spot. So for the first couple of years, like coaching was just kind of a side gig for you in a way. You had your full-time job, but you were just
Right,
coaching the team on the side.
right.
You were talking about how to be full of information and everything like that. And I found a little blurb online that said you were the first college gold coach in 1985. So you had went for your gold coaching at the same time you had just kind of taken over the team, correct?
I'm not sure of the dates, to be
Okay.
honest with you. But I know another place I got to involved. I was asked by then head coach Fred Borton to be one of the assistant coaches for
Mhm.
the U.S. team, and that was another enormous personal change for me. The learning was off the charts. We got to go to the Olympic Training Center. We worked with this top people in sports psychology and the biomechanists that are there that you have access to as a group one Olympic sport,
Yeah.
and it was another just incredible learning opportunity. And learning is the whole deal. You never stop learning, and
Right.
people who have that, and I'd like to think I have a little bit of that, and I think our players do too. That have come in, the ones that are not interested in learning really don't work out too well at Wichita State. If they're not interested in working and learning and being loyal to what they're being shown, that's really not something that's going to play out for them. I don't care how talented they are. They've got to be able to realize that they can always get better. And
Yeah.
if they realize that and are interested in that, I think we can help them, and that's kind of where we've always been.
Yeah. And it's cool to hear you say that because there's a lot of colleges and there's a lot of people in general that would say, hey, I'm going to Wichita because I'm the best bowler in whatever area, or I'm going to Weber because I'm an international player and I'm the best in whatever country. Weber International is, the international school, so I want to go there. But there's a lot of people who just think that people end up at these programs or, develop out of these programs because they were good or they were great before they got there and they just got even better. But in your stance, in your mindset, it's more about the player development, not just as a physical bowler, but as an
Right,
overall human being on how to develop both,
right,
how to learn properly, how to
right.
study properly. And that's on the lanes and off the lanes, as well as developing the physical game and the overall understanding of bowling itself and just understanding the full development of a human being throughout the college phase that they're going through both on the lanes and off the lanes.
Well, that's really, you said it in a nutshell there. I mean, if we figured we could attract good people,
Hmm.
and if we can get them to be better people, and we can have them be excellent students and have them excel in the classroom. Well, good people that are good students usually work out pretty good as bowlers.
Yeah.
They usually do. They usually become pretty great players because our sport demands a learning mindset and a work ethic to go along with it. And uh, somebody that comes in and says, gosh, I'm the greatest that you've ever had, at least I was in my area.
Yeah.
I just need to know what spot in the lineup you're going to put me. Well, that doesn't work real well with the
Yeah.
program. You have to go out and earn it. You have to go out and show that you've got an aptitude to progress and
Hmm.
strive to be better. I haven't seen hardly any junior bowlers come into our program that are anywhere close to the talent level that they are coming out.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that are interested in getting better and working and very interested in learning. And learning is not restricted to the lanes. Learning
Hmm.
is first and foremost an academic
Hmm.
situation. So that's one of the things we pride ourselves on most is the number of academic All-Americans that we've been able to create, 3.5 GPA or higher. Wichita State's got some demanding majors. Many schools do, and we do
Yeah.
too. Very proud of some of the engineers and the people that have come in and high levels of biology or chemistry or whatever and excelled
Hmm.
and found out that I can do both. I can excel in the classroom and it makes me excel even more on the lanes. These things are linked. They are absolutely attached to each other. It's the ones that come in and don't want to work in the classroom. Guess what? They don't work on the lanes very good either.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do, but not. The rule is most of the time that doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely more of a personality trait that just spans throughout a person instead of just
Yeah,
one specific subject or topic or whatever it may be.
right.
I do want to touch on something that you,
Yeah.
excuse me, also mentioned. You talked about dealing with Coach Borden there, with Team
Mhm.
USA and everything like that, and having the experience to go down there and talk with, the greatest people of all
Right.
time, basically when it comes to coaching. How much did you being with Team USA play a factor into your coaching? Because I know you were obviously a great bowler as well growing up, but how much did that play into you working with a coach like himself and the Team USA camp to, excel your coaching career?
Well, Fred Borden's a unique character.
Yeah.
He's probably the most gifted coach I've ever been around. But his greatest skill is motivation. His ability to inspire people is unparalleled. I've never run into anybody any better. So he's a package where he's kind of a gift to the bowling world.
Okay.
Worked with a tremendous number of professionals and helped their games, yes, but got them to believe they could be successful because he's such a great motivator and so inspirational. So that was a real treat for me to work with him. And we had a team of coaches, and we were the first team. We were the team that the athletes, either the men or women's team, saw. I was very proud of the fact that we were able to show what a team was
Hmm.
so they could see what a team was. We're a team of coaches. We're not going to stab each other publicly, and we're never going to do that in front of other players. We're all going to agree with each other. We may disagree privately, but we're not going to disagree publicly.
Hmm.
And we taught good team play concepts just by example.
Yeah.
So he still is remarkable in his mid 80s. He's just incredible.
You talk about teams, and I don't want to say hang you out to dry on this one, but I'm gonna put you a
Yeah.
little bit on the spot. You've coached so many great teams over the year. Is there a
Mhm.
team that specifically stands out to you, whether it's from a coaching base, somebody that you had coaching with you or people on the team? Is there a specific Wichita State Shocker team that stands out to you that you think was the best team, or that gelled the best, or that just got along together? Like, is there a specific team that you would say is almost your favorite?
Now,
No.
I'm not trying to duck the question. I think all of the teams that incorporated the things that we're talking about were my favorite teams, whether they were successful or not.
Mhm.
If we went out there and we went all in, we made the decision to see how good we could become through effort and through learning, then they were the best team I ever had. And we had a lot of those.
Yeah.
Now, were we always successful? No, we were not able to create that type of belief um, with every team we had. But when we did, sometimes it was kind of magical when that happens. And I think those players would say the same thing when that occurred. We've had players come in and say things 10 years later and say, boy, I sure had a golden opportunity to get better while I was in that program. And I wish I would have taken more advantage of it. And then we've had the rare ones come in that take full advantage of it and they excel beyond that, because this is a game. This is a sport that, you don't stop learning and you continue to work at it. The more you get that great foundation from youth to college bowling, the further along you are at the higher levels, whether it be the U.S. team or whether it be the tours. It's a good start for those players. So I think every team that worked at it and learned to a high level was my favorite team, and I'm happy to say that was most of them, not
Yeah.
all of them, but
Yeah.
most of them. Yeah.
That's fair. So I'm going to dive into a couple of accolades here, just because we're going to cover exactly the coaching career that you had as far as Wichita State goes. So these are just a couple of stats I pulled off of. So you've coached 9 individual national champions, 6 at the Intercollegiate Singles Championships, which is the ISCs, known for, all college bowling. You had 12 student athletes claim a combined 24 NCBCA Most Valuable Players of the Year and IBMA Collegiate Bowler of the Year awards, and coached 145 NCBCA All-Americans, and nearly, one stat that you already brought up, 250 academic All-Americans. So obviously college bowling is full of amazing bowlers, right? And it's not just Wichita. We talk about it a lot on the podcast, where especially on the women's side, you'll get some teams like Stephen F. Austin, McKendree, UMES, which is University of Maryland Eastern Shores.
Sure.
You have Weber. You have even like Robert Morris when they're around. There's been some amazing college programs out there with phenomenal bowlers come from different programs
Right.
all throughout the country, even St. John's now. What do those numbers mean to you? Are those numbers that you kind of take to heart and say, wow, that is a massive amount of a resume just from that specific thing? Or is it one of those things that that's what you strive and that's what you kind of expect from your students, is to reach the top level that they possibly can, whether it's academics or athletics?
I guess a couple of points on that. Number one, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is no one does this in a vacuum.
Mm,
There's someone like me is looked up and look what he did and look all of these things, but I didn't do all these things.
right.
I had a group of people that supported me, either in our student union, on our coaching staff. We had a whole team of associate coach. We have clinicians come in that teach our players in the mental game, physical game, lane play, bowling balls. These people are the reason that our players were exposed to more information and were supported throughout the time. So this team that I've got or had, that any little credit that's attributed to me is really due to a whole bunch of other people that were on this team. That's the first thing. Then the other thing, when you say those things, it's not it. This is one that it's kind of an interesting one to me. We were allowed, or we worked at, surviving for all of those decades.
Okay.
What does that mean? What that means is it's not equal for everyone, in the sense that, I started there as a coach in the mid 70s, late 70s, and I was there all the way until 2019. Not everyone had that opportunity, because when you think about the structure of collegiate bowling, it was linked to, many times, a student union, not an athletic department, but to a student union and their budget. So as student union directors changed, as rec center managers changed, as funding changed, many times the bowling team went away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, you don't have a sport when you're having coaches be volunteers. And I was a volunteer essentially for nearly 20 years. That's hard. That's
Yeah.
real hard because this thing is a full-time endeavor and you do it part-time and try to get good at this as a volunteer, it burns people out.
Right.
So programs come and go. Okay. We were allowed, it was a lot of work, but we were allowed to have support. We earned it. We worked at it. I taught a lot of people I worked for the value of the program we had, and they liked the idea that we're developing people, that are developing students, and we're developing athletes in that order. And they like that, and they like the idea of funding a program like that. So we were able to survive. So it's not an equal look in the sense, not to say we've had favoritism. I worked my rear end off to keep us at a high level. And that's a lot of what I did as a coach, is to try to keep the support we were having continuing to come in, because if without it, we would have not survived. So all of those things are wonderful to say, but it took the team of people to do it. It took belief by my higher ups to continue to support the program. That was pretty key. And I don't think that unfortunately happens too many places.
Right.
Now you have the NCAA that has started. Now it's really happening because why? Because these people are being paid full time to do it.
Yeah.
Coaching has become a profession in a lot of places, and anybody that has continuity can learn. And I think these NCAA coaches, just like me, we are learning as we go. We're learning how to be better at this job. I think most of them, if they're honest with themselves, will be saying that. None of them would probably be saying, whoa, I know everything about this. We've only had NCAA full-time women's bowling since the mid-90s.
Yeah.
So, you're talking 25 to 30 years. Yeah, that's a nice run. But that's not to say we know everything, because there's a lot to learn. But at least I'm being paid full-time, and I can try to figure out how to learn what to do to make my players better, to make my program better, to recruit better. All of the things that go into any team there wasn't anybody to guide us. We have to learn it kind of like I tried to learn it, is watching other sports, talking to other coaches, seeing what they do, trying to be better. That's how we learn. So those are the 2 points.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that you bring up a good point, because obviously as human beings, we're always evolving, we're always changing. Each kind of generation kind of changes about how to deal with certain people, and how you can talk with different people. And it's very, I guess, relieving to hear you say, because we've talked about it a lot on the podcast. You were, in a way, you were a stepping stone, right? You were an early coach in college bowling before it even really started to pick up necessarily, right? But now we're seeing more of these tour players, these PWBA bowlers, PBA bowlers,
Right.
kind of give back to their community, to their school, and become coaches, right? When they have the time. And I think that when they have, I'm using you as an example, obviously, when they come from the Wichita State program and they turn back and they end up going coaching, they develop those, main pieces of their coaching style from you, because you were learning how you're coming up and you were pulling from other sports and whatnot, and you were really learning how to develop people. So now you have these bowlers who bowled 4 years in college, bowl out on tour, used to bowl on tour, whatever it may be. They now have the character development aspect from your standpoint, as well as the actual bowling standpoint that they've either experienced in college or from other coaches.
It's not unusual, DJ. I mean, we look at any other sport, so-called established sport. What's going on there? The players that play for those coaches go on, if they're not going to be NBA players or NFL players, they go on and become coaches. And that's what didn't happen in our sport, because there was not an occupation. There was not a coaching profession to move into. They wish there was, but there wasn't. Now there is. There's not enough jobs to really go around for, my goal would be to see every small and large college have a women's college bowling program and a men's college bowling program. I'd like to see both. I think it's probably easier on the women's side, because it's now universities recognize it. The athletic departments are behind this. That's big time. That really helps our sport on the women's side enormously. But there's no reason it can't happen on the men. It just takes a little more work. NCAA, I'm not sure that's going to happen on the men's side. But certainly on the women's side, we need to take advantage of this opportunity, and tons of schools need to look at the advantage of having an excellent women's team with paid coaching and get after this. We're still kind of in our infancy, to be honest with you. on the coaching side. There's a long, long ways to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I said seeing some of the pro players, the tour players, whether it's men or women's, come out and be coaches is
Yeah,
really good, I think, for the sport right now because they have the experience of both kind of like the player development and then the on-lane stuff. Now, there's a couple other things that I just want to bring up as far
sure.
as accolades go. So you have 18 national championships. Well, there's been 18 national championship teams under your direction, nine
Uh-huh.
national champion individuals. You had 369 tournament wins, which is crazy. That is an insane amount. So 45% of the tournaments that your program was involved in, they won. And then there's 37 USBC Eagles won by players that you had coached. And then there was, this is crazy too, 59 professional titles won by players that you have coached, and 96 number of national team members the program has produced under your direction. Again, we've established that it's been a team thing between the
Right.
yourself and the coaching. It was, if
Right.
it wasn't just for you, it was along with the people that you brought in
Sure.
for the clinics and everything like that. When you look at these tour players, Chris Barnes, Jake Peters, Prather, Frankie, Mitch, Sydney, all these amazing bowlers,
Right.
what does that do for you? Does that make you feel like what you've done in coaching is, does it make you feel like you've accomplished what you were looking for as a coach? What does that do for you?
It's pride. It's tremendous pride because those people, almost to a one, are continuing to try to figure out how to improve.
Hmm.
People would ask them, I'm sure, gosh, Barnes, why are you so successful? And I think Chris would say, if he's honest, he'd say, I've continued to try to learn how to bowl. I've
Hmm.
continued to try to figure this out. So if we've implanted anything in them, is that you're never maybe going to get all the way there, but you're going to continue to strive towards not maybe perfection, but try to get to excellence, that type of idea.
Right.
I'm tremendously proud of that. I tell you, one of them, I think we're up to 62 PBA titles now. Uh,
Probably, yeah.
and I'm not sure that might not be quite right, but yeah, I'm unbelievably proud of that. But the USBC and prior to that ABC Eagles, uh,
Hmm.
that's kind of an amazing one too, because many of those are in team events,
Yeah.
and we would have players from different times recruit each other to bowl together, and they would
Hmm.
still speak a similar language on how to play lanes and how to attack a condition as a team. Um, those make me very proud because
Yeah.
those are situations where even though you didn't bowl with this person or that person, you can get together and play at a high level
Yeah.
because you understand how to look, what to look for, how to communicate with each other, what to say, when to say it,
Yeah.
how to say it. There's a lot to that idea, a lot to that. You don't have the right to get angry at your teammates all the time,
Hmm.
especially if it messes up their shot. You can't
Yeah.
do it. Leave your shot gone. As soon as it comes off your hand, it's gone. The results are gone. Now your role is turn around and inspire your teammate. And some of those people took that to heart and they put teams together over all these years and gone to the USBC Open and attacked the lanes in a team manner and have had success. That's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, that was, I never thought about that, but if I remember correctly, I think there was a team of like Brent Bowers, Devin
Yeah.
Bidwell, Jesse Buss, and like TJ Rock, like four completely different generations,
Yeah.
all went to Wichita. But the fact that you bring that up, it kind of hits you, right? Is
Yeah.
when you guys or when players develop from the same coach, the same
Right.
program, for the most part, you have that communication, you have that dialogue that is easy to follow and understand because you spent 4 years studying, learning, talking the
Right.
exact same way. So
Right.
when you have that relationship that you don't even realize that you have until
Yeah.
you're on the lanes, can
Right.
make any bowler better. And I think that even we see that out on the pro tours, like, well, why are the pros always so good? Why are they always one step ahead of everybody? It's because they consistently talk to each other. They're all speaking the same language because they're all bowling the same events and they all communicate of what's going on, what they're seeing, why, what's happening. So the fact that you even reference that, and I never even really clued into that, that
Yeah.
it can be introduced in the college level, that if you look at somebody like TJ Rock and Chris Barnes, where they're bowling out on tour and they can talk
Yeah.
to each other, even though they're 20, 30 years
Yeah.
apart, whatever it
Yeah.
may be,
Yeah. It's
they have
pretty
the same,
cool.
they
They
have
have
the
the
same
same
communication.
team language. I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah, the when the tour team stuff comes up, when and they're competing, I think tonight or whatever. I think there's
Yeah.
competition. It's always intriguing to me when we do the draft. Maybe it's an accident. Not all of our players are taken, but a lot of our players get chosen to bowl on different teams in the PBA league. And I look at that and I say, whoever the managers are, the coaches of that team are
Right.
picking them because they're good supporters. Well, yeah, they're good supporters. They've been trained to support their teammates. So, it's little things like that, and maybe no one else even noticed, but I notice those things because that's the culture we have created at Wichita State. Team play, there's nothing like it. I mean, we got to be honest. You played on a team, you know what it's like when it's right. It's the highest of highs. It's individual success amplified by the number of guys that are girls that are on that team, and
Yeah.
it's a feeling of euphoria and excitement that you cannot explain. It's not something you can put into words. That is a great love of mine, is team play and teaching team play skills, because they are skills, make no mistake about it. It's not something people walk in and learn,
Right.
especially if they come, or walk in and know, I should say, especially if they come from an individual bowling environment. They don't understand how to
Right.
play together. And they don't even believe it is a team sport. It's an individual sport and people are just put together. No, they're not.
Yeah.
They have to fit with each other. They have to work at it and
Yeah.
learn how to support each other. It's tremendous fun for me to watch a couple of those things each year.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that because we talk a lot about how like my closest friends come from my college bowling days. Like those people that you spend 4 years with, that you're studying with, that you're practicing
Yes,
with, you're driving with, the relationships that you build in college bowling are unlike anything else in this world.
absolutely.
But then you look at somebody like the house, where you have Packy, you have Bitch, you have Frankie, and you have
Yeah,
Prather, who are like, oh, well, these guys are friends because they went to Wichita. No, these guys are friends because they speak the same language, because they bonded at Wichita, and they've continued to grow that relationship as a group of friends, all obviously with Nick Pate and all the other guys as well. But, those four guys have stayed together since college bowling, and that's where they met at Wichita, and they've just grown up since then.
right. That's true. All of
Yeah,
that is true.
yeah,
I'll tell
absolutely.
you, a lot of things to certainly be proud of, and certainly some of the things that we taught are unique. Team play is one of those. Communication is one of those. Some of our mindset work, our mental training, our sports psychology. We had Dr. Dean Hennitz with us a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, he's extraordinary, and we've learned a lot from him on how to do this better between our ears.
Yeah.
So we know the game is largely there. So how can we improve how we do things? All of the communication and team play stuff is exciting when it works, but it's not the only reason we do it. What's that do when you're all talking, watching ball motion? You're all talking about moves and lane play. What does that do to your mind?
Hmm.
It focuses you. It
Yeah.
eliminates a lot of stuff that you could be thinking about that's irrelevant, that might take away from your performance. There's a lot going on here. It's real simple when you hear it, but it's really effective when you do it right.
Absolutely. And I got to give a quick shout out here because one of my favorite moments ever in my youth career was winning nationals as a doubles pairing with past shocker Caitlin Tam, because her and I
Awesome.
bowled together as doubles when we were 12 years old in 2008. We repeated back after our first year in college in the same place, at the same bowling alley that we originally won. And I remember talking with Caitlin during that time, and from the time the years that I've known her, it was like a completely different person. And I was like, Caitlin, like, what's going on here? Because like I studied bowling, and I was like, you were a great bowler, but you never studied bowling. And she's like, at Wichita, this is how you learn, this is how you practice, this is how you communicate with one another. So when we got back in after our freshman years of college, it was a whole new person that I was bowling with compared to who I bowled with in 2008. And I just remember her telling me that is like, yeah, Wichita has taught me all this stuff. And it was just in 1 year that she had become a completely different person in bowler. So it's really, I guess, humbling, like I said, in a way, to hear that what you actually preaching to us right now is applicable, because I've heard it, and I'm sure many other people have heard it from the people who have went to Wichita.
Yeah, Caitlin she's special, man. I mean,
Absolutely.
you talk about a monster, and of course, working out's another thing. Being
Oof.
physically fit. Is she fit or what? I mean,
Yeah.
she is amazing.
Yeah.
So I just, that's one of those work ethics, not only personally and academically and athletically, but in the inner fitness, off the chart. And I remember those things because those players teach us things about what the right way of behavior is, or the absolute best way is, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, we've talked about how all those numbers have made you proud. And obviously, like, you look at the overall coaching staff and you can say, we did this, right? Not I did this, but we did
Right.
this.
Right. It's definitely a team effort. Right.
Absolutely. So I
Yeah.
have two things. It's basically the same question, but is there a moment on both the men's side and women's side? I want you to give maybe one of each that has stood out to you as far as a coach that made you the most proud. That means the most to you. Was there a national championship that the guys won or a tournament that the women won that you were like, wow, we did it. I cannot believe this has happened. Give us two of those moments.
Hmm.
If you
Well,
can, of course. I know there's plenty, obviously, but
that's
is there two that stick out?
well, there's different paths to get there. One of the ones that sticks out to me, and he was just in town. I had breakfast with him the other day. You mentioned his name, Jesse Buss.
Hmm.
Jesse is an extraordinary person, another awesome athlete, great bowler, and we went into the national tournament. I can't remember what year it was, and we got drilled. And he was on that. We had this really good men's team, and we just got drilled in the bracket. And we lost our first match. We won a couple matches. We played the team that beat us. We lost again. And my vision, that was, we're knocked out of the tournament. And my picture, I can't get out of my mind, uh, was Jesse Buss in defeat, sitting there for probably an hour after the tournament was over,
Okay.
in the settees, facing the pins with his head in his hands, crying.
Okay.
uh, how can this be a good moment? I looked at Nathan Bohr, another one of our alums who is an excellent professional player. Nathan was assistant coaching with me as a volunteer. He and I looked at each other. We can't let this happen again. We got to do something different. So it was a moment where we had an epiphany. There's some things we can change. So we
Mhm.
went to a village inn, sat down for about 4 hours and scripted out a whole different plan on what we were going to teach going forward. So my greatest moment was with the men was the next year. That was a good one, not the greatest perhaps, but a good one. Largely that same team came back the next year and they won the national championships, incorporating some of the things that they were highly motivated too. That didn't
Yeah.
hurt, but they incorporated a lot of the things that we were teaching that year.
Mhm.
Present tense thinking, breathing, staying in the moment, things you hear about cliche all the time, but living and breathing that literally and taking that into the tournament and winning it. That was awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
On the men's side or the women's side, there's so many moments there. It's hard to put one out there. I'll go way back. I'll just go way back.
All right.
I wasn't coaching. I was my first year coaching. Okay. I said, this really good women's team. And I didn't know squat about coaching that
Yeah.
first year. I was basically just looking around and trying to observe what these women did.
Yeah.
We had a player on that team that was from Wichita. Like a lot of our players were pretty local back then. We weren't recruiting nationally and internationally as much as we see now. And so this girl, Karma Mason, uh, she was a bulldog. She was on the 75 team that won the national as a freshman with my wife. She was on the second place team in 76 and 77 with Vicky Little as the coach. They won the national. That gave her 2 national titles in 3 years. And in
Yeah.
78, the tournament was in Milwaukee, and here I am, a rookie coach. Uh, well, Karma knew that. So Karma really wasn't interested in me coaching.
Right.
She basically said, I'm taking over. And I'm smart enough to get out of their way. So I
Yeah.
guess this was an okay. To me, it was a real learning experience. I got out of the way. I let Karma run that women's team, and she ran it with an iron fist. Man, you're going to be here to practice. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. She was absolutely driven, and she
Mhm.
took those girls and won the national title in Milwaukee. She anchored that team, and I was incredibly proud to be a part of that team because that
Yeah.
showed me a lot about the effort and the work it takes to be successful at this. And she won 3 titles in 4 years with a second. Now, I don't know how many people have ever done that, but
Yeah.
she's pretty phenomenal. So that's a story. I don't know if it's the best story, but there's so many, it's hard to pick one out of that. But those are
Absolutely.
the ones that pop in my mind right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that both of those stories speak to the overall program, right? It's the Jesse with the coaching of like, how can we help this player? How can we help this team? And then you as a coach being like, maybe I just need to step back from the players. Let the players
Step
do the
aside.
players.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
I didn't have enough ego to step in there and say, oh, I'm going to take control. Well, that
Mhm.
would have been dumb as dirt, because
Yeah.
these gals were on the right track. I just need to let them do what they were capable of doing, and they did it.
Yeah. And actually, we had Ty Rose on not too long ago, and Ty kind of talked about that too with coaching Team Canada. It was like,
Yeah,
I spend the months of the year building the team, helping the team develop, getting them ready, prepared for battle per se.
right.
But when that time comes, I am there for eyes and ears. I'm there to let them rant to me, for them
Right.
to yell at me and maybe make a suggestion. He goes, I've done all this work. The team needs to work as a team in
Yeah.
order to see success. And that's why I'm here, is to help build that relationship or help build that team up to the point that they are ready to compete when the lights turn on. So I think that that's a really
Yeah.
good perspective.
Well, and Ty Rose, I love that guy. He's just one of the best coaches we've got, just period. I'm so glad he's back with Team Canada. That's just tremendous. And that's absolutely right. We always wanted to do two things when we went and competed. Number one, we were prepared, right? We
Right.
got prepared. So number one, we went and competed, was to have fun.
Yeah.
Hmm, that's interesting. And the second thing was to play lanes.
Hmm.
So we're going to make the decision to have fun first and foremost when we go compete. And
Hmm.
secondly, we're going to play lanes as a team.
Yeah.
And number one, I don't want them thinking about 100 things. That's
Right.
somebody that's confused, right? And that's somebody that's going to be frustrated and has too many thoughts on their mind. Go in there with a simple strategy to enjoy our company, our teammates' company, and play lanes to the highest level we can. And we'll see what happens after that.
As a follow-up to that question, I guess technically, individual wise, again, I know players are players and they are developed from coaches and so on and so forth. Is there a specific player moment that has stood out to you, whether it be an individual winning a national title, like an individual national title, Barnes winning a major, winning his first major, Dasha winning? Was there ever a moment for you that, as an individual player, that you had helped coach, that really stood out to you, that is like, wow, I cannot believe they won that tournament or whatever it may be?
Again, I kind of go back to that other question. I could give it some thought and come up with several things, but I
Yeah.
think there's probably not one that stands out more than another.
Okay.
It's if their mental game was good
Hmm.
and they went in loose and relaxed and they just let the game come to them. All of those performances were some of the best I've ever seen.
That's fair. Yeah. The skills that you developed in them when you were physically able to see that happen,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then I have just two more questions for you. So
Yeah.
one, obviously we've talked a lot about just player development, just developing as a human being. We talk a lot about that on the podcast, about how yourself as a bowler, you're a puzzle, right? You have to get all the puzzles going. So it's mental, physical,
Yeah.
lane play, understanding all that stuff. What has been your biggest coaching thing that you've tried to engrave on these in the players, besides just developing as a human being? Is there some sort of breathing technique, some sort of physical attribute that you've tried to get them to understand that they need to keep in mind while they're, competing in bowling? Is there one like specific like training tool that you've kind of installed on all your players?
Well, I think there's several ways to get to this, but I would say it's the whole idea of presence,
Okay.
being in the here and now. That is that's the most powerful thing. Our sport is very cerebral. I think we all know it's mental, very much so. We've seen guys with girls with tremendous physical games that really can't execute because of their mind, and we've seen people with not so good at physical games, but mentally they're strong,
Hmm.
and they can take a not so good physical game and play at a really high level. So I think it's those people that just, I've got everything to gain and nothing to lose. I'm going to go in and I'm going to play right here, right now. I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to go all in and let the chips fall where they may. And if they are able to do that at those moments where they might be exteriorly to the public or me, and not really to them, because if they're in that moment, they're not really aware of what they're doing.
Right.
Uh, those are the ones that I think have greatness.
Okay. And would you say that that's pretty much applicable to any bowler of any level? It's just like, hey, be in the here and now, just focus on what you're doing right at this moment. And if you prepped yourself enough, then it's all going
Yeah.
to fall into place.
Yeah, I would think any bowler that has high level success, that's almost always where they're at.
Okay.
And there's a way to do better at that, to train yourself better at that. Yeah, it can be done a number of ways. It can be done with breathing. It can be done with empowering statements. It can be done with a lot of different ways. Just
Mhm.
moving from a feeling of focus internally to an external focus. I mean, it's really simple in a lot of ways, and we tend to make it a lot more complicated. The more complicated we make it, the more the body doesn't want to execute shots,
Yeah.
or it doesn't want to see the lanes and how to move, because you need to be almost in touch with it. Barnes once said when he was playing his best, he can almost feel what the lanes were telling him to do. And if you're really clear mentally, you can have that happen.
Yeah.
But if you're really not clear, you're clouded and you
Yeah.
can't get to that. It's a magical place. Our sport is so psychic, so mental. I think that's why Hennitz likes it so much, is because there's just not a lot of greatness going on mentally, and when it happens, it's just euphoria. It's just an enormous feeling of it's inexplicable. You
Hmm.
can't describe it. You're in the zone. Who can describe the zone? It's a
Yeah.
place where there's no thought. There's
Yeah.
no thought. It's not just taking it down to one thought. The goal is to not think at all.
Yeah.
And let your body do what it's trained to do. Well, that's kind of a hard feeling for most people to get their arms around. It's
Mhm.
hard to imagine that. But it's doable. And the great athletes in any sport, that's what they do.
Yeah. And I think Mike Wolf actually mentioned that on the last time that he had won a title. He goes, "What
Yeah,
happened? I blacked out." And it's like, yeah, like
yeah,
sometimes you need to get into that zone. Kyle Troop, the same thing when he just won the US Open. He was just talking about like, I just had a quiet mind and slow feet. He's like, I had nothing, I was thinking
yeah,
about nothing besides that shot. And
yeah.
clearly it works. And like I said, clearly with your programs and everything that Wichita State has accomplished, it's very true to that statement.
Yeah, we had a head start on it. We
Mhm.
had desire with people uh, to want to learn these things, and we certainly tried a lot of things. Many of them didn't work, but a lot of things. It gave us the ability to learn from our mistakes. We don't want to make the same mistake over and over. That's
Yeah.
kind of the definition of insanity. So we want to have mistakes because that enables us to learn. Like the Jesse Buss pitcher going from one year to the next, I think a lot of good things happened that year, and we were fortunate enough to come out with a victory the next year. But it was not just because of, hey, we trained him real good. We learned from the mistakes we'd made in the previous year or years.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, I greatly appreciate you jumping on.
You bet, DJ.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you and just learn so much from you. And of course, again, congratulations on being inducted to the Hall of Fame. I think it's very well deserved.
Well, it's very humbling. A lot of good people out there. I don't know who came up with this plan, but there you have it. So I guess somebody's got to do this first. Maybe it's just because I'm just so freaking old that I run out of things to be picked for. So I guess I
I don't think that's quite it because there's some older coaches out there that I can think about. But yeah,
me
no,
too. Me too.
yeah, obviously your success speaks for itself. So again, like I said, thank you for jumping on the podcast, and
Yeah.
I'm sure all the listeners appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, DJ. I appreciate it.
Of course, and everybody listening, stick around next week for another episode of On the Gutter. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, DJ.